Hello, 1301. This is the lecture on Walker Percy's The Loss of the Creature. I should note that this is for my 16-week 1301 classes. If you're in an 8-week 1301 class, you don't necessarily have to read this, but it's one of my favorites. I think you'll like it. And I'm also doing this from my home. Maybe you can chart the state of COVID-19 like through my hair. But I wanted to go over Walker Percy, the actual reading. I should note before I get started, it says in the introduction that Walker Percy was in a car wreck. He was a medical doctor. He was in a coma for a couple months. When he woke from the coma, he decided life was too short. He'd always wanted to be a writer. He stopped being a medical doctor and he became a writer because that was his dream. I should also mention something about his stream of consciousness storytelling style. Most things you read in Western literature is linear, A to B to C. What's the point? I got to write it down. What's the plot? What's the message? What's the moral? Walker Percy tells his story through a series of stories. The way real people talk, the way I talk, the way I lecture, a little bit here, a little bit there. And in my way of thinking, it's more real and I prefer it. And even though maybe your first reading, you'll be confused, I think the more you read it, the more you listen to me, I think the more intrigued you'll be. His first example, his first story is about the Grand Canyon. And he mentions Cardenas and value P, throwing some math in there. Cardenas is officially the first explorer to find the Grand Canyon. He's exploring with his band. He sees the Grand Canyon. He puts the flag of Spain there. But Walker Percy's point is there any way, if you went to the Grand Canyon tomorrow with your parents, with your mom, you could ever have as good a time, it could ever be as significant as the very first guy who saw it? And we'll talk about this more later, but there's millions of articles, TV shows, social media about the Grand Canyon. When I was a kid, I watched the Brady Bunch, the old TV show, every day. And the kids on the Brady Bunch went to the Grand Canyon. Alice, the housekeeper, rode on a donkey down to the bottom of the canyon. And I told my parents I wanted to go to the Grand Canyon. So ultimately, Percy's point is, could you go there and have as good a time as the first guy? And in my face-to-face classes, I would say, maybe if you're 16 and you had firecrackers, and you threw a firecracker and everyone jumped, maybe you'd have a really good time. You'd be making your own fun. To the moms and dads out there, if you took your children to the Grand Canyon and you saw how thunderstruck they were, maybe you would enjoy the Grand Canyon through your children, through their perspective. Percy mentioned something about being in a coma. So maybe there is a nursing home there, I believe. If you're in a coma and you wake from a coma and the first thing you see is the Grand Canyon, it's the greatest thing you've ever seen. You're not in the coma anymore. Maybe it's better than what Cardenas saw. So I think you get his point. It might break down to if you're an optimist or a pessimist too. If you're an optimist, I'm important, I'm here too, I'm sovereign, I'm the king, I'm the queen, I can have a good time there. I can have a wonderful time at the Grand Canyon. But if you're pessimistic, maybe you think it's all been done before, it can't be as good as the books. As we go on in his examples, on page 462, he talks about a corn dance. There's a man and his wife. They're in a remote village in Mexico, I assume in the late 50s, early 60s, and they stumble upon a corn dance. And everyone there, they're drinking, they're painted their faces, they're going wild and dancing, I assume because it's corn season, the corns come in. And he didn't have social media then, cameras and Facebook, or Instagram, whatever. But he sort of asked, if you're way out in a remote village in Mexico and you come across this wonderful, crazy corn dance, do you dance, or is your first inclination to get your phone and record? Put it on Facebook. I'm cool. I'm at a corn dance. You're not. I've discovered something no one else has. A good example I would tell my face-to-face students, I went to a concert in Iowa with my friend Wiseman, and everyone was dancing. It was a good concert, and my iPhone didn't work. And ultimately, I teach this lesson quite a bit. The point is, live your life, have fun. Don't record. Don't try to look cool on social media. But my camera stopped working, and I pouted. I'm C-Rob. I tell students every day, or I imply, dance, have fun, have a good time. But when my camera didn't work, I was mad, and I didn't have a good time at the show. So maybe I didn't learn the lesson either. I think Percy is asking about the role of the community. You need the community stamp of approval, the people on Facebook to like what you posted for you to think you're smart, popular, cool, whatever you want to say. And somewhere in there, he talks about finding it. It is you having fun, living your life. When you walk into a room, it's your room. No one else is more important. But needing that community stamp of approval. The next example he gives is a couple in France. They read about student protest on the streets of Paris. And you go to France because you want to be involved in a protest. And if that doesn't happen, you're disappointed. So you read 12 books about Paris before you go. You want it to be one thing, and then it isn't. People are just sitting there. Maybe his point is you make your own fun. You make your own good time. Moves on toward the end to the point about drinking coffee, Dunkin' Donuts. He moves on to the example about the dogfish. So you're on vacation with your family at the beach. You're walking down the beach 6 a.m. You find a big seashell, and it's really cool. You show it to all your friends. You're an explorer. You put it in your luggage, take it home, put it on your mantle. I found this seashell at the beach. I'm an explorer. But then vacation's over. Monday, you go to school. You go to your biology lab. Your professor puts a seashell, a dogfish, in front of you, and you're supposed to dissect it. And then you don't care, you don't like it. That's something that the man is making you do. So you find it on the beach, it's cool, it's interesting, you're an explorer. The man, your biology professor, makes you dissect it. It's just some other stuff that you have to do as part of the system. Somewhere in the mix, he talks about consumer packaging, educational package. So ultimately, anything you do in school is something the man is making you do. You don't like it. You want to be free. You want to be on that beach. All the books that are written on starfishes, dogfishes contribute to the package. He's sort of asking, if you go to school in English 1301, can you learn something? Can you have fun? Can you be engaged? Can you be the king? Can you be the queen? Can you be sovereign? Or no, day after day, week after week, year after year, you're sitting there, the man's giving you stuff to do, and you don't want to do it because it comes from the man. It's part of the consumer package. It's part of the education package. And he asks toward the end, are you sovereign? When you walk into the room, when you walk into your job, the classroom, wherever you go, are you the king? And it might have taken me a while, but when C-Rob walks into a room, I kind of think, I am the king. I'm there too. I can light up the room. It's a little bit like Rodriguez's lesson from the first essay. You have to be motivated. You have to care. If your teacher says something cool and interesting, you're engaged, you talk because you believe in what you think, you're interested. versus just sitting there and being a follower. And then maybe one of his last examples is an art museum. You go on the class field trip in 10th grade. There's a tour guide. You do what the tour guide says. It's boring. Or ultimately, maybe you go outside and carve your initials in a tree. He talks about that at one point. Maybe the same 16-year-old has firecrackers. You throw a firecracker. You have fun through your friends. You have fun through your children. You're not just following the tour guide. And we'll talk about that more later, but he makes a point subtly. Tour guide to tourist is kind of the same as a teacher to students. Do you let the tour guide just lead you along the way and tell you what's important? Or are you engaged? You're there too. You're at that art museum. You're having fun. You're finding it on your own. Okay. And remember, Walker Percy, it isn't one single example, one moral. He tells a bunch of stories and puts them together. If he tells 20 stories, you're obliged to feel those stories and put them together on your own. Okay, that's Loss of the Creature.